Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. So I had a very low rating week, but I think I finished quite a few things. They're just all pretty short. I just was not feeling it this week. I don't think I was really sick, but I was feeling a lot of brain fog and lack of energy. So I literally think I did not read 3 days out of the week, which is a lot for me. Like usually I am a every single day reader. So I watched some dumb TV, I think is mainly what I did. I think I watched a couple more Veronica Mars episodes, and I started The Great Chocolate Showdown, I think is the title. And I really like it. I like the format. It's that kind of the same format as the Baking Championship series of shows. And I like all the contestants. It seems pretty feel good. There's one thing I really don't like, and that's one of the contestants she's fine, but she has a child with autism, and that is made out to be kind of her whole identity. Like, that's all there is to her every time she's interviewed, and every time she's interviewed about it, she starts tearing up, and they play the sad music, and yet at the very beginning, she made a point of highlighting how he is so high functioning you wouldn't know, and yet it's really clear that it's made out to be this emotional thing for her. So that's frustrating at the very least. It makes me think of, or it just brings to mind the fact that there is this big divide with the actual autistic community where certain major advocacy groups are really disliked by the autistic community because their focus is really actually on the parents and families of the autistic, who kind of view it as a burden rather than the autistic folks themselves. And so there is a lot of animosity there for sure. I think if that's something you want to get better exposure to, Miracle Creek is actually a really, really good book that I don't know how much I love the story, but I do think it was extremely effective at portraying that parental situation of having these children and feeling like they're a burden, and the kind of manipulation and things that those parents do. And then it also explores very well the immigrant experience of starting a business in America. So it does those things extremely well. And then as a story, it's not quite as good, but I enjoyed it. So Miracle Creek, definitely, if that's something you want to explore more, check it out. But so I think the show is fine. It just is this one thing that keeps coming up that's really annoying. Very much gets under my skin. So anyway, that was a complete ramble. What else? I think other than that, watching wise, I started I don't think I talked about this before. I'm a Spider, So What, which is, I think, formerly a manga or a webcomic in Japan, and it has been turned into a show. And it's an isekai, so it's like a reincarnation or portal into another world. This one is reincarnation. So this Kumiko is reincarnated as a spider. So she's like, okay, I guess I'm a spider now. And she is going about figuring out how to do spidery things. But then it also has, and this is very common in isekai, has like video game style elements. So it involves leveling up skills and that kind of thing. So it's really fun. It's very, very goofy. I like it a lot. So I think that's probably it. Onward to the actual books. So, number 1, we got Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafon. And I think it's a very translated pile this week. So this one I've been working on for more than a month. I think almost 2 months, in fact. This is a big chunky book, and it is almost historical fiction with a little bit of speculative maybe, but it's all about Daniel, this boy who we follow through his life as a child, as a teenager, and as an adult. And it begins with his father, who is a bookseller, kind of taking him to this secret location where he can select any book that he wants. And the book that he selects is The Shadow of the Wind. And he finds out that this book may be the last of the author's works in existence. And he kind of becomes obsessed with this book and the story of its author and how it came to be the last of its kind, right? So we're following him through his entire life as he is obsessively researching and hunting down anybody that might have any information on this. So that is interesting on its own. I think as a plot, it was not very surprising. I kind of knew what was going to happen, what was playing out very early in the book, but it's just so beautifully written and kind of richly laid out. So actually, in this copy, at least, I don't know if it's in all of them, but there is like a tour at the back that walks you through the sites and places, and there's a map of the whole location. So it feels very realistic. It feels like it's just history. It doesn't feel like the fiction part, right? So I enjoyed that aspect. I think the characters were extremely well drawn. So they are very easy to read, but they're really unlikable. And I think it's probably appropriate that the worst character, the absolute most hateful, disgusting character, is a police officer. So he is just horrible and crooked in every possible way. And so all of the characters, including the protagonist is very selfish and jealous throughout the book, lots of times. So if you don't like that, I think that's probably the main detractor here. There's one other thing that I think is, I don't know how I feel about. So there is a character who is gay and a drag queen, we find out, and is well liked in the community, and everybody seems to love this person. But one night he is jailed and is clearly very, very mistreated in jail because of his status as a drag queen. And that is pretty horrible what happens, and it seems possible that he may only exist in the story for that to happen. So that I don't know how I feel about, or if I feel bad about that being in there, because I don't have quite a read on the period as to what the portrayal is. So just be aware of that. Otherwise, yeah, there's a lot of mistreatment of different people, lots of domestic violence, so much domestic violence, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of unlikable characters in here. But overall, I think it's a really beautiful book. And I don't know if I would continue on. I haven't looked into the synopsis of the sequels, but I would need to look into it before I decide. I think this was pretty self-contained. So enjoyed that one. Next up, I read a manga. And so yet another translated work by a woman. This is What Did You Eat Yesterday by Fumi Yoshinaga, and this is translated by Maya Rosewood. And this is all about Shiro and Kenji, and it follows kind of to the title point. It talks about cooking food a lot. So Shiro cooks very frequently, and he is very frugal. So we get things like the details of him finding cheap deals on food at the grocery store, stuff like that. So that's fun. It's a very slice of life. So it's mostly just that, with scenes from their life in between where Shiro is not out as gay at his workplace. And so Shiro and Kenji have discussions about the fact that one of them is publicly out as gay and the other one is not. Stuff like that. And we get how they interact in that way with their families or people that they know, both from the past and the present, and how being gay in Japan impacts their lives, and the ways that the culture kind of judges them. So it's really interesting that right at the beginning, and I think, I don't know that this is bad translation, but it's maybe a little too direct. For instance, Shiro is frequently viewed as creepy because he's too attractive for his age. And that's seen as part of him being gay as opposed to just something that he wants, right? Like he should have let himself go at his age is really the thing. And so there are things like that that are in there that I don't know how I feel about as well. So that didn't work as much for me, but overall I really liked the story and the just slice of life snapshots that we got in this. So it was okay. I would probably continue on if I see other volumes. Next up, I read Resistencia, Poems of Protest and Revolution. And this is introduced by Julia Alvarez and edited by Mark Eisner and Tina Escaja. And I found I really enjoyed this. So I'm not a big poetry reader, and I specifically was looking for something like this for Women in Translation Month because it has both the English and the original language side by side. So I was looking for that. We do have a lot of women poets in here, but this is not all women poets. And it has a great section at the back with bios of all of the authors and translators. So enjoyed that. It really, really does such a good job of keeping up the theme of resistance and rebellion, really. So all of the authors are writing in completely different ways, and even on completely different topics. But they keep coming back to those themes in different ways of resisting and rebelling against oppressive government and capitalism and retaining identity and culture in the face of that oppression. So I marked a lot of poems that I liked. I think I'm probably going to do a larger wrap-up of my Women in Translation stuff, and maybe I'll look at some other poems for that. But this one is really short, and this one's not by a woman. So I'm going to read The Earth is a Satellite of the Moon by Jose Leonel Rugama. Apollo 2 cost more than Apollo 1. Apollo 1 cost plenty. Apollo 3 cost more than Apollo 2. Apollo 2 cost more than Apollo 1. Apollo 1 cost plenty. Apollo 4 cost more than Apollo 3. Apollo 3 cost more than Apollo 2. Apollo 2 cost more than Apollo 1. Apollo 1 cost plenty. Apollo cost a heap, but no one cared because the astronauts were Protestants and they read the Bible from the moon, astounding and exhilarating all Christians. And upon their return, Pope Paul VI gave them his blessing. Apollo 9 cost more than all of them put together, along with Apollo 1 that cost plenty. The great-grandparents of the Aqualinca people were less hungry than the grandparents. The great-grandparents died from hunger. The grandparents of the Aqualinca people were less hungry than the parents. The grandparents died from hunger. The parents of the Aqualinca people were less hungry than the children of the people from there. The parents died from hunger. The Aqualinca people were less hungry than the children. The Aqualinca people were less hungry than the children of the people from there. The children of the Aqualinca people were not born because of hunger, and were hungry to be born, to die from hunger. Blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the moon. So, very much anti-capitalist, resisting against corporatism and that sort of cultural oppression and cultural division between, obviously, the moneyed and the not from other cultures that are losing out. So I found it extremely powerful, and really there weren't any duds in this whole collection. So that was really surprising for me since I haven't read very much poetry. So actually, next, recall who that introduction was by, Julia Alvarez. So while I was browsing the children's literature, I spotted a familiar name and picked this up. This is by Julia Alvarez, and it's already a butterfly, and its artwork is by Raúl Colón. And so I just grabbed this because I am all about following any sort of influence that I've enjoyed, and so I grabbed it right away. So this is super sweet little book about Mari, who is a butterfly, and she flits from flower to flower and doesn't even stop to pay attention to what flowers she has seen. But here's some art. But she seeks some help in calming herself. So she is reminded to remember when she was in the cocoon and she was so peaceful and restful. And so there is this technique of following her breath and being in the moment more. So that's what this story takes her through, and I really enjoyed that. But beyond that, as always, at the back there is actually a note from Julia Alvarez where she describes exactly why she wanted to write this. Young people everywhere are worried about the future of their home planet. More than ever, they need a quiet, centered space in which to feel safe and at home. Without that center, activism can easily morph into anxiety and loss of hope. One evening, after a day of volunteering, I asked my granddaughters to join me in meditating. I told them a version of the story I've written down here. So that's what this is, and I really thought it was sweet and great. So beyond that, sticking with quite short stuff, and I think I had started this last week, I continued on with How to Be a Good Creature by Montgomery, and it's a short book, and it's told in 13 chapters, so it's really split up and it's illustrated, but it's been beautiful so far, so I'm looking forward to continuing that this weekend. Then I continue on with Best of World SF, a couple more stories in that, and finally, I haven't not started, but on my docket for tomorrow, I've got Deadlands Boneyard by Seanan McGuire, and that one is from my TBR. So I think that is all of my stuff to read for the weekend. And I don't know what next week will hold. I did get my bookshelf tour done, edited, I think. I need to, hi Cinnamon, I need to get through a quick run through of the second part to verify that it doesn't have any problems. I had really major problems with the first one. I had to edit it multiple times. It kept getting like corrupted and having problems, so thank goodness I finally got through it. It probably took me 10 hours of editing to get through and finally get an actual working copy for part one. So part two is not quite as long. I think it's about a half an hour and should be good. So hopefully that will go up this week. In terms of other stuff, I have not hardly been watching any booktube, so I don't have anything to recommend there. I think I have one or two things that might be recommendations, but I have not watched yet in terms of other like author stuff. So we will see. So I don't have any recommendations this week either. So I think that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you have a great weekend.